1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi folks, in this episode we're going to be talking about learning how to jam. In some musical subcultures, this might seem like a bit of a funny topic because learn how to jam, that's all we do, that's what music is, right? But in other subcultures, jamming is kind of an esoteric skill and maybe a scary seeming one, and you may be a little unclear as to what jamming even is. Is all improvisation jamming? Is all jamming improvisation? I'm going to do my best to bridge the cultural divide here, and if some of what I'm saying seems kind of obvious to you, know that it is not necessarily obvious to everybody who's listening. And I'm going to be talking a bunch about my own learning experiences and about a bunch of recordings that I've been making to help people practice their jamming, including myself. I'll start with a little story. Yesterday, when I went to pick up my kid from school, I brought my guitar with me. I got there a little early. I like to sit on a bench in the schoolyard and practice. And sometimes other people bring guitars out as well. There's a preschool teacher who brings his guitar sometimes. There's another dad who does. And so yesterday, this other dad who plays a lot of jazz showed up, and he had his axe. And so he was like, oh, great, let's jam. So what that meant was we played through a couple of jazz standards that we both knew. So, Summertime, that level of thing. So we played the melody together. I played the chords because he knew these melodies better than I do. And then we just took turns playing solos while the other person played the chords and bass lines and things like that. And then we played the melody again, the head out, and then that was it. And so that's pretty standard for what jazz is. And then there were a couple of tunes that he was really eager to show me that I kind of know, but not very well. So the standard Moonlight in Vermont, I'm vaguely familiar with it, but he basically just taught it to me there in the moment. And then we tried playing it together. And it was very loose and kind of chaotic, but it was fun. So yeah, there's a couple of different things that jamming might mean. And that is one of them, right? Where there are some tunes that everybody's familiar with, or at least that people can learn in a hurry. And they have these standard forms, and you can just kind of go around and everybody can play solos for as long as you feel like it. And the details of the arrangement are improvised in real time as well. So with these jazz standards, everybody agrees on what the chords are, but what specific voicings for the chords do you use? What embellishments you use, what rhythms you play them in, that's kind of up to you in the moment. There is another version of this where you come up with songs completely in the moment. So that might mean you get together with somebody and you just make up a song right there on the spot. And that might take the form of a collective songwriting experience, or it might be more like free jazz where there is no real structure to it. Everybody's just doing their thing in the moment. Yeah, so jamming might mean either of those things. So how do you learn how to do this? Well, the first thing you need is just a lot of vocabulary. You need a lot of raw material. So let's say you want to participate in a blues jam. Okay, well, that means that you need to know a bunch of blues songs. And the good news is that blues is very formulaic. So if you learn a few songs, you start to kind of see what the patterns are. And it's really less about memorizing entire songs and more about just kind of learning these tropes, these rhythmic tropes, the standard chord progressions, the standard bass figures, the intros and endings, the kind of most common accompaniment riffs. And then if you want to play solos, you got to know, all right, what are the scale shapes? What are some riffs and some melodies that you could use as raw material for your improvisation? Or if you want to play jazz standards like I was doing yesterday, okay, well, jazz is also very formulaic, but the formulas are more complicated and there's more of them. So that might mean, okay, you should definitely know some of these standard tunes, All the Things You Are and Summertime and things like that. And if you know enough of them, then picking up additional ones is not nearly so hard. But these tunes tend to be more complex. And so, yeah, there is more to be learned. You got to learn your chords. There's a lot more different chords. You got to learn your scales. You got to learn these melodies. You got to learn some standard riffs and phrases and improvisational approaches. And yeah, so whatever style that you want to be jamming in, you got to know the basic material. So the last time I was jamming in the playground with this teacher, we worked on Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder, which I had been learning, and he was very familiar with it, but like didn't have it memorized. So I taught it to him real quick, and he was able to pick it up because, again, he's familiar with it. And then he taught me an original tune of his that's just this like 4-chord loop to infinity, and we had fun taking turns improvising on that. But I could pick that stuff up because I know a lot of funk, soul, R&B songs, and so it's more like kind of a narrow variation on a bunch of patterns that I'm already very familiar with. But so in addition to the technical music vocabulary, there's also some psychological skills that you need. So you need to be tolerant of uncertainty, right? So as we were playing Summertime yesterday, it's not like Summertime is such a difficult tune, but I just, for the life of me, could not remember how you get from like one chord to another chord. And all you're doing is going from minor to the relative major via 2/5, but just for some reason, I kept stumbling over that. And so I just kind of BS'd my way through it the first 5 or 6 times until I suddenly remembered, oh, D minor 7, G7, C, like in every other song. So you got to be willing to just sort of like bowl through that stuff and not, stop and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I messed up. Yeah. And then if you're going to be in a more open-ended improvisation situation, then you've got to be able to really listen. I mean, and you should be really listening, no matter what kind of music you're playing in what kind of situation. But yeah, for free improvisation especially, you got to really be reactive. You got to be willing to just turn on a dime. If the other person does something unexpected, you got to be ready to just roll with it. You have to be willing to just be at sea, to feel lost. You've got to be able to call up all this vocabulary that you have memorized and deploy it and combine new stuff together in the moment. You have to be able to sustain your focus, but without overthinking. Like you can't be tense and you can't be in your head, but also your mind can't be wandering. And you got to be able to manage stage fright, anxiety. So yeah, this is a lot, right? And there's nobody who's just born able to do it. It's just that there are some people who come up through these musical cultures where you get a lot of practice doing these things. And so it seems very effortless. If you play a lot of rock or country or blues or jazz, you just put in a lot of hours doing this stuff. And so it seems very intuitive. If you're like a classical musician, it might seem very scary. And it's not that you don't have the skill. I mean, this is all stuff you could pick up. Yeah, you just don't necessarily have the practice doing it. The downside and the upside to building and maintaining your vocabulary is that it's a process that never ends, right? I mean, I know a lot of jazz tunes, but I definitely don't remotely know all of them. And so yesterday, this guy was teaching me Moonlight in Vermont. I'd never played Moonlight in Vermont before. I'm like, oh, this tune, it's really a beauty. I should go home and study this. Yeah. Like the process just never ends. You will never know all the tunes and all the riffs and all the scales and all the chords. But then that's a good thing because it's fun learning this stuff. Yeah, it's fun learning new things and it's a lifelong journey and you never get to the end of it. And yeah, that's great. If you are not currently part of a scene or a community or like a friend group or whatever, where you're currently doing a lot of jamming and you want to get into one, how do you do it? Well, there are these subcultures where jamming, collective improvisation, whatever you want to call it, is just routine, right? So the Black church, hip hop, right? Like hip hop ciphers, the world of Latin percussion, certainly jazz, blues, bluegrass and old time music. There's a video game music scene where people get together for jams. And those are all these really warm, supportive, and inviting scenes where if you can hang, like if you can play the music, then you're welcome. And, these are participatory music scenes, meaning they want everybody doing the thing. And having everybody involved is much more important than polish or skill. Now, everybody likes it if you're polished and skillful, but it's much more important that you be participating than that you be excellent. But let's say you want to play some kind of music that is not part of one of these scenes, or maybe there is no Latin percussion scene where you live, or there's no video game music jams or whatever. So what do? You get some friends together, you like go to a school. I mean, it can be really difficult depending on where you live. And even if you are part of a scene, one challenge that you face is if you're a beginner, you are most likely to only be jamming with other beginners. And the unfortunate thing there is that as a beginner, playing with other beginners is much harder than playing with people who are better than you, because the other beginners are constantly getting lost and playing stuff wrong and not keeping good time and like being anxious or overthinking or whatever. So yeah, you want to be surrounded by people who are better than you, but then like, oof, that's hard, yeah? And I spent like my entire 20s in New York City basically trying to surround myself with better musicians than me. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And this was in the 90s and early 2000s when New York was much cheaper than it is now, especially out in the boroughs. So it was easier to find these sort of like casual music opportunities. But actually, New York City is not a good place to be a beginner or even intermediate, because this city is full of the best musicians in the world. And so if you go to a jam session, it's not just a bunch of random people, it's the best jazz musicians on planet Earth, the best blues musicians, the best country musicians. I mean, it's very intimidating. And so you actually might have an easier time of things outside the cultural capital of the United States. As housing gets more expensive in big cities, as people have to work a lot harder to be able to like live, it's just getting to be more difficult. And I mean, that's like a structural economic thing that I have no solution to whatsoever. So regardless of what kind of scene you have access to, you probably want to be able to work on your jamming by yourself. That's not a substitute for doing it with other people, but it's definitely a good supplement to it and can be really good preparation for it. But then how do you do that? Well, let's dispense with some bad ideas. There's the metronome. Everyone hates the metronome, and rightly so. Playing along with a metronome or a click is actually kind of an advanced skill. And I've been playing now for I don't know how many decades, and I freaking hate the metronome. Can't stand it. Drum loops are a much better way to practice, but then you gotta either be sourcing drum loops from somewhere or learn how to program them. And I think everybody should learn how to program drums. It's a very useful skill and it's a lot of fun in and of itself, but maybe it's not practical for you, or it's just not what you want to spend your time doing. And also, drum loops, like they don't give you harmonic support and they can feel a little cold. Yeah. No, what you really want is recordings of humans playing music that you can play along with. But finding those recordings can be hard. Now, if you're a jazz musician or an aspiring jazz musician, you have a gigantic advantage here, because this guy, Jamey Aebersold, has spent the last 5 decades putting out these jazz play-along records where it's just a jazz rhythm section, piano, bass, and drums, just playing accompaniment.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So, it might be 12-bar blues in every different key, or it might be I got rhythm in different tempos and keys and styles, or, all the different standards, or a bunch of tunes by Duke Ellington or whoever. And they come with charts, and then you just blow solos on top of the record. And the records are wonderful because he gets these like world-class jazz musicians to play on them. So that's great. It's not 100% optimal because obviously it's a recording, so they're not responding to you. And in actual jazz, like the whole point of jazz is that everybody's responding to each other. But those Aebersold records are definitely a wonderful resource. And now there is this software like Band in a Box or iReal Pro where you can generate your own fake Aebersold tracks. So you just put in the chord changes and you put in the style and the tempo and da-da-da, and it just spits out these tracks. And that's nice because, you know, it's convenient, infinitely customizable, da-da-da, but I don't like those things. It just like the uncanny valley aspect of it. I do enjoy playing over electronic music, but then I wanted to just be electronic music. Yeah, like fake real musicians. I don't like it. Okay, but so let's say you don't want to play jazz. I mean, YouTube is full of these karaoke tracks and backing tracks, and some of them are really good and some of them are really bad. But yeah, it's just not as satisfying as the actual recordings. Like if I want to play funk, I don't want, you know, generic funk backing tracks that somebody made in Logic Pro. I want Parliament. I want James Brown, yeah? In the era of the internet, it's very easy to find recordings, but like playing along with recordings can be a pain because maybe there's a certain part that you want to work on, but then you have to keep skipping back to the beginning of it. Or maybe the tempo is just too fast for you to be able to keep up with, or maybe the recording was mastered a little too fast, and so everything is like a quarter tone sharp, and you got to retune your instrument to it. That's actually like pretty common. And so, yeah, as I have been going along all of this time, I've been curating these recordings for myself to play along with, and it can actually be quite difficult to source good ones. So what I found was, okay, what I want is stuff that is slow, or at least not excessively fast. I want stuff that is very repetitive and very predictable so that I can really like sink into an idea and work on it for long stretches without having to pause and rewind all the time. So one thing I found is Papa Was a Rolling Stone by The Temptations from 1972, the full-length album version. This is 12 minutes of just killer funk in B-flat minor. There are no chord changes. There's like this minimal structure of verses and choruses, but the verses, choruses, and instrumentals are all basically the same thing. It's just this groove in B-flat minor. And man, if you want to work on funk in B-flat minor, there is just not a better platform for it. And there are some other one chord to infinity songs out there. A music teacher named George Howlett compiled this wonderful list of one chord songs. I put a link to it in the episode description. And yeah, there's some real bangers on that list. So here's Bo Diddley by Bo Diddley.
Told it in the side, baby, diamond ring. If that diamond ring don't shine, he gonna take it to a private eye. If that private eye can't see, he better not take the ring from me.
Here's Chain of Fools by Aretha Franklin.
Chain, 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 chain.
Here's Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant.
Now in the street they and then a lots of work to be done. No place to hang out or washing, and then I can't blame all on the sun. Oh no, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
Yeah, so those are all just wonderful, killer, classic songs that are a pleasure to just listen to, real easy to play along with, and yeah, just a real gift for music education. Another good place to find music to jam over is hip-hop instrumentals, right? Because hip-hop instrumentals do tend to just be very harmonically static and predictable. And I mean, you can play over the full thing, but I kind of prefer having the instrumental just because I don't want to have to compete with the MC. So here's one of the most iconic 90s instrumentals. This is Shook Ones Part 2 by Mobb Deep. That's an incredible groove. It sounds really good. It's in B flat minor, like the Temptation song. The problem is it's pitched about 10 cents sharp. So either you have to deal with your instrument being a little out of tune with it or tune to it. I finally made a version where I just pitched it down, but yeah, that's not ideal, unfortunately. I really enjoy practicing over J Dilla instrumentals. So here's the track that he made for Thelonius by Slum Village and Common. This is also in B flat minor. Yeah, just a really delightful thing to play over, and spending some quality time with Dilla beats is just a great way to deepen and sharpen your time feel. Yeah. The thing that's great about that Temptation song is it's long. Yeah, you can really settle into it. So another good source of long, uninterrupted, harmonically static grooves is the Grateful Dead. And they have a ton of these very, very extended modal or 1-chord, 2-chord grooves. The only challenge there is just kind of digging through all their stuff to find the really good ones. One of the most famous ones is Scarlet, Begonias, and Fire on the Mountain from May 8th, 1977. If you start at the end of Scarlet Begonias, then you get just 19 minutes of B mixolydian, the chords B and A over and over and over and over at a nice laid back tempo. So yeah, if you want to work on your B mixo, this jam is a good one. For funk, you definitely want to be playing on top of James Brown, and James Brown has got some really perfect stuff for you to play on top of. So for example, there's the tune I Got to Move from 1970.
I know you're gonna show everybody where's that. So jump back.
if you skip the intro, then it's just this 7 minutes of D-Dorian funk with no interruption and no twists and turns. Really perfect. And then there's the closely related tune, There Was a Time I Got to Move, also from 1970, which is also 7 minutes of just pure, uncut, uninterrupted D-Dorian funk.
Help me. There was a time I used to dance. There was a time, baby, I used to prance. People dig me now. Good God. Don't worry about it later. They the dance I used to do with my soul, huh? They call them agitators.
But then James Brown has a lot of recordings which are like good for improvising, except for some structural thing that makes them a little bit annoying. Now, I don't mean that they're musically annoying. I just mean that they're not optimal for settling into a practice session on top of. So, for example, there's this classic tune, Soul Power.
No, we need it, soul power. We got to have it, soul power. No, we want it, soul power. Got to have it, soul power. Give it to me, soul power. Hey, need it, soul power.
So this is an amazing groove, but like, if you want to practice jamming, the problem is every once in a while they go to the bridge, and that's not such a big deal. But when they come out of the bridge, there's this odd length bar.
Love me tender, I love me slow. That don't hurt, don't back for more. Look at here. You gotta get in the bracket.
I don't know, for me at least, it's like a little bit disruptive. It's not like the end of the world, but I really like to use this tune in class to help my students practice their improvising. And I don't want them stumbling over these transitions. So what I had to do was edit the song so that it's just sections of the main groove.
Give it to me, soul power. Hey, need it, soul power. Give it to me, soul power. Hey, need it, soul power. Give it to me, soul power. Hey, need it, soul power. Give it to me, soul power. Hey, need it, soul power. Good God. Good God. Good God. Good God.
James Brown also has this tune called Blind Man Can See It from 1973. And starting about a minute into it, there's this G minor groove that is just killer. It's so satisfying. And there's so many really wonderful little segments of this groove, like this one. This one. And this one. However, first, there's this goofy, awkward chord progression. And then after a few minutes of this incredible G minor groove, it goes back to the goofy, awkward chord progression. And then there's this end section where it's just the guitar, and that's really cool, except James Brown is rapping on top of it, and it's not one of his better raps.
Sure need some gigs, man. Can't get no gigs, I'll take a job.
I was like, oh, to really get the most out of this groove, I'm going to have to edit it down to my favorite parts. So yeah, I ended up putting a fair amount of effort into isolating the best parts and building this kind of seamless instrumental track out of them. Herbie Hancock's Chameleon is a really good 2-chord funk groove for practicing over for the first few minutes. It starts and it's just B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 forever. But as time goes on, it gets to be more difficult to play along with because, first of all, it speeds up. And second of all, at about 7.5 minutes in, there's a section change, and now there are new chords. It's not that complicated, but it's definitely like more for you to deal with. And then as the track goes along, suddenly like the form gets really fragmented and weird and unpredictable, and then it's just kind of impossible to improvise over. So yeah, again, for the benefit of my students, I ended up editing together just some sections of the opening part that can just loop to infinity. So all this funk is really great, but if people are beginning improvisers, James Brown and Herbie Hancock can actually be kind of daunting. And I wanted some stuff that is simpler. So definitely rhythmically simpler, harmonically simpler. And so, for example, I just wanted like a bright, sunny major key thing for people to work on their major key melody improvising. And I decided to go for The Weight by the band.
I pulled into Nazareth, was feeling about half-past dead. I just need some place where I can lay my head. Hey, mister, can you tell me my hand, no was all he said.
I just took some loops of the intro and the post-chorus, the little instrumental break coming out of the chorus. And yeah, this is a very improvisation-friendly thing because it's like this nice, chunky, satisfying groove, but it's nice and slow, and it's very, very easy even for beginners to keep up with. I really love Dear Prudence as a jam vehicle. Some of the happiest musical experiences of my life have been playing very, very extended versions of this tune. But if you want to play along with the recording, it's too short. And also the form is like a little too unpredictable because it goes to the bridge and then the bridge has like odd phrasing. Also, when my students are improvising over it, I don't want them having to fight with the vocal melody because the vocal melody is just so like strong and iconic that all you want to do is sing along with it. I do have the multi-tracks for this song, so I just muted the vocal and then made a couple of loops from the verse and from the bridge. And yeah, this is like a really satisfying jam track. So as I'm introducing students to jazz, I'm finding I don't want to just give them jazz standards because navigating the chord changes, it's too much. First, I want them to get the feel together. I want them to learn how to swing. I want them to learn the rhythmic phrasing. And I want them to be able to focus on those things without also having to think about the chords. Because as soon as there's chord changes, especially if they're unfamiliar, then all you're doing is thinking about the chords and like your phrasing and your swing just goes out the window. And at the level that I'm teaching, the phrasing and the swing are much more important than being able to navigate the chord changes. So what I've been looking for is jazz tunes that have these single chord vamps or like two chord vamps, these long open-ended modal sections. And also that aren't too fast because a lot of jazz is played at a very intimidating tempo. John Coltrane is a really good source for this kind of thing. For example, his tune Mr. Knight has these beautiful modal vamps, and his rhythm section, McCoy Tyner and Jimmy Garrison and Elvin Jones just play so beautifully on these vamps. help them internalize a jazz waltz. We can use My Favorite Things by Coltrane. There are some beautiful vamps in there, but you got to kind of compete with Coltrane's playing, and that's a lot. So I actually prefer to use this tune called Contemplation by McCoy Tyner, which has these beautiful intro, outro, and these interludes that are just C minor to infinity. This is not really a waltz in the European sense. It's more like alternating bars of 4 and bars of 2, and that takes some getting used to. So yeah, I like having these harmonically static vamps for people to practice getting this time feel together on. When we're working on really odd time signatures like 5, I mean, the obvious thing to reach for here would be Take 5 by Dave Brubeck, and that record is cool and everything, but just for variety, I actually like to use some loops of Brad Meldau's arrangement of Anything Goes. And so that full arrangement is much too complicated for people to improvise over, but I just use some loops of the intro and the bass solo, and those work really great. When we're working on 7/4, I really like Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel, and you could just use the song, but then the song, it's kind of complicated, and there's bars of 8 in it at the end of each chorus, and so yeah, I ended up just making some loops. This is not so much for my students, it's more just for myself. There's this tune by the Mahavishnu Orchestra called Miles Beyond, and it's in 6/4, which is a really fun time signature. And it's this beautiful, smooth, creamy groove, but the composed melody is really hectic and angular and awkward and, like every Mahavishnu tune, just frankly annoying. And I really just want the groove, but there's not much of the groove. And it took me a huge amount of effort to edit together the groovy parts into a seamless open-ended track. But yeah, totally worth it. I just love practicing over it. I've ended up making a lot of these jam tracks, and some of them are for my students and some of them are just for my own enjoyment. I put links to download all of them in the episode description. They have this practical benefit, like if you want to practice your guitar or you want to practice scat singing, I think the jam tracks are very well suited to that. Certainly, for my own tastes and for the music that I'm trying to help my students through. But I've also found that making the jam tracks has just turned into like a really satisfying art project unto itself. And it's basically the same pleasure as producing hip hop. And I have not produced a lot of hip hop, but I've produced a little bit. And this thing of digging the crates for the samples, for the good samples, for the things that sound really good when you loop them. Because not everything that sounds good musically makes for good loops. It's this very specific condition where the end of the loop has to match seamlessly with the beginning of the loop. And even in very repetitive music, that's not always necessarily going to work. Like making loops of jazz tunes is really, really hard, as it turns out, just because people are playing with so much variation and so much kind of unpredictable phrasing and so on. It's actually quite difficult to find these seamless loops. Versus in James Brown, it's extremely easy. Like you can pretty much just throw the loop brackets around any 2-bar chunk and it'll pretty much just sound great. It's easy to sort of dismiss looping a piece of audio as, oh, it's so easy. And it is easy in concept, but actually doing it can be quite a challenge, and not just with the sort of technical aspects of getting the tempos lined up and all that stuff, but creatively, there's more to it than you would think. There's a book that I really love called Making Beats, The Art of Sample-Based Hip-Hop by Joseph Schloss. And he's got this wonderful quote where he talks about when you're looping a sample, you're juxtaposing the sampled material with itself because you're creating a connection between the end of the loop and the beginning of the loop that was not there in the original recording. So he says, by connecting the end of a phrase with its beginning, quote, looping automatically recasts any musical material it touches, insofar as the end of a phrase is repeatedly juxtaposed with its beginning in a way that was not intended by the original musician. After only a few repetitions, this juxtaposition begins to take on an air of inevitability. It begins to gather a compositional weight that far exceeds its original significance. So yeah, I think that's true. I think that by fundamentally altering the topology of a piece of music, you are making a new piece of music. And that might seem a little bit silly because this new piece of music consists entirely of this existing recording that you did not make. But yeah, my experience of making the jam tracks is it feels very compositional. It feels very much like the experience of writing a new song. So I've been posting the jam tracks as I've been talking about this. And at first I was just posting them as these loops where the idea was you would just like put them on repeat in your iTunes or whatever, and they would just like repeat to infinity, which meant that they started and ended kind of abruptly. But what I found out is people started emailing me and saying, oh, I'm actually just listening to these things. Like I'm not using them to practice. I'm literally just like listening to them for enjoyment. And that had never occurred to me that that would be a thing that you would do. But once I found out that people were doing that, then I was like, oh, well, let me fade out the ending. So they still loop infinitely if you put them on infinite playback in your iTunes or whatever, but you can also just like listen to them from top to bottom. So people are listening to these things as like albums, which was surprising to me because I was like, oh, well, isn't it kind of a boring listening experience? Like they're meant to be backing tracks. That's like walking around listening to Aebersold records. But then I tried just like walking around and listening to them, and they are actually quite enjoyable to listen to. Not in the same way that you would listen to like actual songs. You know, listening to my infinite loops of The Wait is not like listening to The Wait. But I have to say, it is this nice kind of meditative experience listening to them. Like it does kind of get you into this enjoyable flow state. And I mean, isn't that what music is for? Yeah. Like I don't have any new age spiritual beliefs. Like I don't really believe in any of that stuff, but I do believe that being in a meditative flow state is good for you. Like it feels good. It has, demonstrable physiological benefits. If you want to reach for a spiritual explanation for that, that's fine. I don't think you need to, I think, just on a purely biochemical level, it's not that mysterious to figure out like how that works. But yeah, loops, they're fun to listen to. Not every loop in every situation, but a really well-chosen loop and a carefully edited one, yeah, can be very, very pleasurable to listen to and can really help you focus in and just kind of dissolve your ego. And what I found is I started playing with loops just as like a practical solution to this problem of finding stuff that is enjoyable and useful to practice over. But I found that doing a lot of practicing improvisation on top of loops helped my playing with other humans a lot, because I am an anxious person, a highly anxious person. And the way that manifests in my playing is I'm full of good ideas, but I keep changing the subject, or I like lose the thread of an idea, or I abandon the direction and like change directions because I'm afraid that the person who's listening is getting bored or annoyed with me or whatever. And playing with loops has encouraged me to just settle into a groove and stick to it. Now, you can just spin out infinite linear, non-repetitive, blah, blah, blah over loops if you want. But yeah, I've just found as I'm like trying to really dial in with some part of the bass line or whatever, that like I end up playing a lot more repetitively than I naturally would. And it ends up sounding really good and feeling really good. And after kind of getting into this habit, then I would go into jam situations with other people and I would just like settle into a groove, like just settle into some rhythmic figure, some riff, whatever, and just play it like in units of 8 or 16 with no variation. And people really appreciate that. People are like, oh, dude, you really listen. Like, you really support the song. You're not just playing for ego. So yeah, that was like an unexpected side benefit. And yeah, definitely something that if, like me, you're a white person who is crippled with anxiety and has trouble focusing and has trouble just like staying in the moment, loops can really help you with that. Now, one question I might ask is, what is the point of me talking about this? What is in it for you to listen to me talk about this? Because this thing of making custom jam tracks to play along with, it doesn't necessarily scale. It works for me because I have done a lot of producing music in digital audio workstations. And so for me, getting a song and finding the audio file, bringing it into Ableton, lining it up with the tempo grid, identifying the good loops, and doing all the sort of careful like cross-fading and matching of little segments of audio together to create these seamless loops, from a technical perspective, is a piece of cake. But if you are not a highly proficient producer and editor of audio, then learning how to do this would be kind of a project. And I mean, I guess I'm happy to support people in doing it, but I don't exactly know what my desired outcome here is. Do I want people to hire me to teach them how to do this? I mean, sure. Do I want people to hire me to make them custom loops? Sure, that's a thing that I have done and will happily do. Or do I want people to just go on Bandcamp and download my jam tracks? Sure, why not? I mean, I give them away for free. Like, they're not exactly legal. Like, I don't feel comfortable charging money for them. But yeah, if people want to use them, they should. Or, you know, maybe it's just the general concept that people find inspiring, or maybe just people find it interesting to hear what I'm up to. I don't really know. All I know is I just think I'm onto something. I think it's a good idea. It's been very effective at getting me to be a better improviser. My students really enjoy using them at NYU, and my private students, when I have those, seem to really dig them. People seem to really enjoy listening to the jam tracks just as works of art. And so, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this is useful to you too. Or if nothing else, at least inspiring. Thank you very much for listening.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.